Hi, how's it going? This is Andre. This is going to be a tutorial on how to mimic Ableton's mapping editors for making multi-effects knobs. So I used to like to make a lot of multi-effects knobs in Ableton that I used to use in my live sets, and basically what that does is it just scrolls through a series of effects and then modulates different parameters within those effects. So similar to what the effects selector does in Bitwig. So I'll show you an example of that. So over here I have this setup that I just threw some effects in here right before this, so it's doesn't sound all that great yet. It's a bit rough, but I have a sample rate reduction, a stutter effect, a pitch shifter, and a time stretcher, and so you can see what it sounds like morphing between them. So yeah, you get what that's doing. And notice one thing too is that whenever the knob goes to either side, goes to 0, goes to 100, it totally bypasses all the effects. So yeah, that's the way I used to like these to work. Is that I can basically scroll through it and it does various effects. So you might be looking at this and thinking, why is any of this necessary? Because we already have an effects selector. And the reason I'm doing this stuff is because even though we have the effects selector, for one, we don't have a mapping editor in Bitwig that works like Ableton's, and that, like, if I want to, for example, have one knob subdivided, so say like the first 20% of the knobs, so like 0 to 20 or 0 to 25% being sent to like a filter cutoff, and then 25 to 50% being sent to delay time, and then 50 to 75% being set to like a time stretch amount or something. So you can't really set that up exact in Bitwig, but it's pretty simple to do. Just for that part, you don't need any of this stuff going on. If you just want to do that, all you would have to do pretty much is just set the knob to a scalar and then scale to the amount that you're subdividing. So if you have, like, in this case, we have 4 effects, you could just send this scalar out to a modulator and run it into, and have it modulate these macro knobs on each effect. So one thing, yeah, if you look at how this is working, as I turn this knob, you see how each one of these macro effects opens. And then the other thing that's happening is the mix opens at much faster though, but the mix opens. So that's how it's basically mimicking the effects selector. And you could simply do this in the effects selector, but the reason I like to do this is that you have more options. For one, you can have overlapping effects. So like, say I want from 0 to 50% of the knob turn to be set to like a stutter effect, but I want an overlapping effect, like I want from 25% to 75% or something to be a filter. So that's where some of this stuff would come in. And yeah, and the one thing I want to say too, some people had asked me on my previous video if I was going to be uploading any patches. So I will be uploading some patches. I didn't really know that there was websites that people are sharing grid patches on until somebody made me aware of it. So I just signed up for Discord, and I'm going to get that stuff going soon. I've been a little bit kind of flaky and not too present with social media for the last few years, so I'm trying to pick it back up now because I have a new music project coming out, so I'm trying to get a little bit more active out there. And then on top of that too, yeah, I'm planning on putting together a whole general course on music production in Bitwig, and I'll probably be including some grid patches that'll go with the course too, like some of the bigger grid patches. And if anybody saw my first video where I was showing a bunch of the patches I've been doing, I've been reworking a lot of those patches to make them a bit more CPU friendly and to make them just easier and simpler to understand what's going on, so labeled better. And yeah, so I'll have some of that stuff out soon. I'm right now working on some of my own music too, so it's, it might take me a little bit of time. But yeah, I wanted to show you just how to set up this kind of thing. And so like I was just saying, yeah, if all you simply wanted to have was this type of thing where there's a macro for each one of these sample selectors, you don't need any of this stuff. You could just simply scale this and send it out to a macro, because since this is scaling it at 1/4, you basically have 4 ramps. So there's already basically a ramp for each one of these. And then, you could also send it through, for example, a splitter module or a split module, and have them set to each one of these, the scaled up version of this knob. So that would give you that. But if you want to have if you want to have other timings, so like this whole setup here of 0 to 50, 0 to 75, 25 to 75, then you kind of need to set up some of these other things to get it all working. But this looks like, it's a little bit difficult to set up at first, but the whole idea with something like this is, you set it up one time, save a preset, and then you basically have a preset for any subdivision you want of a macro knob. So if you want a macro knob that's like subdivided by 6 or by 4 or by 8 or whatever, you have all those different options. And I'm going to get all that stuff uploaded too, but I just wanted to show kind of the process to do a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I wonder what else I should go over. Oh yeah, so the way these are, the way it's switching from each one of these effects, since I'm not using effect selector, which again, you could use the effect selector to do this, but but then you can't have overlapping effects and all. So the way I'm doing this is I just have a wet dry that's being triggered by these over here. And then, so let me just, I think that's everything. So let's create a blank effects grid, and I'll show you how all this works. I'm just going to copy this camel fat onto here just to thicken up the sound a little bit, because this is it's just a drum beat I made in Addictive Drums. There's no effects on it, so it's very basic. What was I about to do? Yeah, let's get an effects grid. Load that onto here, and then we can just put this off. We don't really need to use this. So the first thing, let's get a value, and we can call this main knob. And then let's get a scalar. Let's get a constant. Let's get a multiplier. So first thing, let's put this up to 4, and let's set this at 4. So this you can change these for whatever the amount you're subdividing the knob to be. So let's multiply this by 4 over here. And then again, like I was just saying, all you really would need to do if you just simply wanted to have each of the chains having their own macro would just be to send this out to either one modulator, or you could, if you wanted like individual hits. Well, here, let me just show you. Let's get some chains going. So first of all, let's just call this effects group. And then let's put 4 chains inside. Let me add a macro first to each of these. Let me put the mix down. Let me duplicate these. So we'll have 4 of them. And let's call this effects 1, effects 2, effects 3, and effects 4. So if you just wanted to set these knobs, well, like, okay, right now you have to set up the mix, so you do need a little bit of extra stuff. But if we were just doing this, for example, in a what do you call it? In an effects selector that they have over here. If you see effects selector, this thing, then you could this would basically work, and you could just simply set this modulator over here, or else run it through a splitter. Oops. Like this. That would go through here, and and then you have this kind of behavior right here. So yeah, that works. And then you could do the same thing for the mix because you want that to be a little quicker. But I'm going to show you how to do this basically with Logic modules instead, how I had it on that other one, so that you have a bunch more options for setting other things up. So let's just delete this. I'll keep these modulators though. Whoops, what did I just do? All right, so I just wanted to load up. I had a photo of the set of the patch from earlier just so I don't mess anything up, so I can not be troubleshooting too much. So basically, to set up this sort of kind of sequencer thing with Logic, let's just use constant modules. Let's get 5 of them. So these will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then let's go into Logic and get 4 of these. And then, actually, I don't remember if we should use this one or this one. Let's use this one for the last one. We might have to tweak this. I don't exactly remember. So usually when I'm working on these things, if I mess up anything or if I'm just trying to figure it out, I use oscilloscopes to see what's happening with all the movements. But anyway, yeah. So let's just we multiplied that by 4. Okay, cool. So let's attach this to the top part of all of these Logic modules. Let's run these constants into these. And then, just a second, I have to sneeze. Okay. And now let's run these down to the lower constants. And then let's get some AND modules. And this whole setup is kind of mimicking what the split does. But the reason I'm doing this again is so that I have different points and gates for the different points, like the different subdivisions, so that I can use them for different things. And yeah, again, it might seem a little bit roundabout doing it like this, but it's one method and it gives you some different options. So let's grab a select. We don't even really, for this part too, we don't even really need to run the select. Like we could just simply run these right out. But if you do the select, then what it's going to do is you're going to have that modulation only for that point. So either way works depending on how you want, depending on what you're doing with this. So these will be running to here and here. And then, so now let's just see if this works. Oh, wait a second, are these assigned? Oh, wait a second, I forgot to run the, I forgot to run the scaled, what do you call it, into here, the scaled value into here. So now let's try this. Okay, so that's working the same way as the splitter did. And now, if we want to assign the mix, let's grab some lag modules first. And let's do this so that we can see exactly what everything is, because the whole point is that we just want to have a bunch of different modulators for being able to send to different things. So let's call this one 0 to 25. Oops, I put O to 25. And this whole basic technique can be used for whether any subdivision you want, whether it's 6 or 8, 16, whatever. And like I was saying before, the whole, you would just, rather than going through this every time, you would just save presets for any subdivision of a macro knob you want to use. And I'm going to get a bunch of this stuff uploaded too. To 100. So now to set up the wet dries. Actually, before we do that, let me just copy these. Now let's run these from the and modules. So basically, this is just going to give us a gate, and then the lag modules will give us a little bit of an attack for how the wet dry kicks in. And what we can do, let's set up some macro knobs now. So let's first set up a macro over here for the main knob. Call this main knob. And then let's set up another one over here for the lag modules. And let's call this dry, wet, lag. Okay, did I already assign that? Yeah, I did. Okay, so did I assign this? No. So this one's gonna, let me first turn these down. Okay, this one's gonna go to these. So yeah, that works like that. And now let's just grab some modulators. Let's duplicate them. I'm going to put a label over here just so we know what this is. Let's call this dry wet. Okay. And now let's assign these to the mix. And so now, basically, now what we have is just a really roundabout way of making an effect selector with these knobs for each of the effects. So basically the way, what you would do with this part so far is every effect that's in here, you have one macro knob that can morph whatever as you're turning this knob. So this knob will control everything. And then, and let me also add, so remember I was showing you how on either side I want to bypass all the effects. So to do that, let's get two constants. Let's set this one to 0, this one to 1. Actually, no, let's set it to 0.1 and 0.99. It doesn't exactly matter, but the reason I'm doing that is that I used to like to have, when I used to use these kind of things in my live sets, I would generally like to have it not be right at 0, because sometimes if I would get like a bit of dust or something on my MIDI controller, it would trigger these kind of effects when I didn't want them to. So I would usually have just a little bit extra space from the 0 and from 100 or an Ableton 128 for where they from when the effects are triggered, so that you just have a little bit extra space. So now let's run the main knob into the tops of these, and then we're going to run the bottoms of these into here. Let's put these into an and then let's get a lag. Run this into here and then get a modulator. And then we can just assign this to the wet dry of the whole thing. And then this lag will just determine how fast that kicks in. So now let's just make sure all that works. Okay, cool. So all that works. So now, so far, all this part has been, not really much you can't do without just using the effect selector and then sending this bit of scaled modulation to each one of them. But where all this stuff comes in hand again now is if you're having overlapping effects and things like that. So I'll show you now how we can add additional modulation options. So let me just first grab some labels. And let's figure out what are the other modulation options that we might want if we're subdividing it by 4. So we have all these. So let's just start with 0. So we already have 0 to 25. So let's get, actually first let me duplicate these. So let's get, in addition to these, let's get 0 to 50, 0 to 75, and 0 to 100. And then let's go down to 25. So 25, we already have 25 to 50. So let's get also 25 to 75. And then 25 to 100. And then for 50, we already have 50 to 75. So let's just get 50 to 100. And then that's basically it in terms of, even modulations, but you can keep adding as much as you want, really, if you want to have all sorts of different movements. But these are kind of general ones that I think would be useful if you're having like a 4 effect knob and you want some overlapping stuff. So the way I would set these ones up here is to first get some and modules over here. We don't really need anything for the 0 to 100 because we can run that just straight out of the knob. And then let's get some scalars. Some resets. And selectors. And again, you don't even really the selectors, it depends on how you want to use them, because this way that I'm doing it now, the modulation is going to go up and then it's going to go back down. But if you want the modulation to stay up, you would have to run these different ways. But these are all just kind of starting, just templates for this type of modulation. So let's run. Oops. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see everything. So if we want 0 to 50 here, so then this one should receive in from this logic module here, and then from this one. And then this one should receive again from that one, and then from the lower one, this one. And then this one, 25 to 75, should first receive from this one to the lower one. And then 25 to 100 should again receive from this one and then down to here. And then 50 to 100 will be from here to here. So now let's run, first of all, let's turn off these pre-chords here. We'll run the and into these. Oops. And then let's also have the and go into these selects over here. Then let's wire these scalars into the resets. And then the ratio is going to be fed from the multiply out. Or not the ratio, the rate, I mean. Let's grab some modulators. And then here, let's just put one over here anyway, just so we have it from 0 to 100. And then, you know what I'm going to do? Let's just make sure that all of these look right. I'm not even going to set these up to anything, but let's just make sure that these are doing what they should be. Let's put this on slow. And these oscilloscopes do have 2 inputs, but I'm just going to duplicate it because sometimes it's a little bit simpler to see what's going on that way. So let's run this one into here, this one into here. I guess we don't even really need that one. Let's run this one into here. You know, this is a little bit weird looking. Let me put that there. Okay, let's run this one into here and this one into here. And then, oh, we also forgot another few things. So these need to be set up into here. And then the last thing too is setting up the ratios. So I just reset all those to 1, 1, but so let's have this one be 1, 2. Let's have this one be 1, 3. This one will be 1, 2. This one will be 1, 3, and this one will be 1, 2. And so let me bring these back over here so we can just make sure that these are working the way we want them to. So yeah, so let's first look at the first oscilloscope. So that should be 0 to 50. Okay, cool. So that works. Once it got, if you see where I'm turning the main knob, once that got to 50, it ended and then went back down. And now let's see, the next one over here should be 0 to 75. So everything looks good. And then, yeah, it gets to 75 and it ends. Okay. Then 100, 0 to 100 we're not looking at. And then this one is the 25 to 75. So let's just see if that works. So 25, and then it should get, okay, that's cool. Then the next one over here should be the 25 to 100. So it should start 25 and go all the way. And that works. And then the last one is the 50 to 100. Wait, did that one work? Let me think. Yeah, okay, cool. It's starting at 50, ending at 100. Okay, so that worked. So you can see now, basically that's the setup for this kind of thing. Now we have the options of all of these different modulation settings. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a roundabout way to kind of do a mapping editor, but this will kind of, you know, again, we would just save a bunch of presets, and then anytime you want to subdivide the macro knob, you could just use any of these setups. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, I kind of like doing it this way instead of using the effects selector. For one, I just like having exact control on the wet dry. And then, although they do work a little bit differently, so you can try both methods, see what works best for you. And then, you know, if you're not having overlapping effects and you don't need modulation that's like stretching across multiple parts, then, you know, the simplest thing to do would just be to, again, run the effects selector and then just run the scaled modulation, and you'll get this same setup of having a knob for each effect. So yeah, hopefully this was useful for people. Yeah, I'm not going to go through and actually build the effect because you get the overall point and the whole structure of this kind of thing. Let me just make sure everything was set up. Yeah, the mixes are all set up. Okay, yep, that's everything. Okay, cool. Hopefully people found this useful. Thanks. Bye.